Hello and welcome. You're watching NewsX and I'm Megha Sharma. Prime Minister Narendra Modi today commissioned 3 naval warships, INS Surat, INS Nilgiri and INS Vagsheer at the Naval Dockyard in Mumbai. These are indigenously designed and built warships to enhance India's defence self-reliance. They represent significant advancements in stealth technology, design capabilities and modular construction for future upgrades. These combatants have undergone extensive trials and are now fully operational and ready to enhance the Navy's maritime strength. The Navy described the commissioning of the 3 major combatants as a historic occasion. The commissioning of the 3 frontline naval combatants will strengthen the country's efforts towards being a global leader in defense and augment its strength towards self-reliance. Let's discuss this. Joining me on the telecast is Captain Sanjay Karve. Thanks for joining us. And Captain Karve, how significant a milestone this is when the Prime Minister arrives at the dockyard and commissions 2 warships and 1 submarine?
It's a very important event in Indian naval history. The first Indian warship which was manufactured in Mazgaon docks was in 1972, which incidentally was INS Nilgiri. And it has taken us 52 years. Today, again INS Nilgiri is getting commissioned. The difference being the first INS Nilgiri which got commissioned in 72 was a British Leander design which was purchased by the Indian government from the Royal Navy and manufactured under license in India. Whereas the INS Nilgiri which has been commissioned today is a thoroughbred Indian ship with Indian avionics and a high quality of stealth features. If you look at the superstructure of the ship, it is unlike a typical naval warship. It has got an angled superstructure which will ensure that it will have stealth capabilities which makes it difficult to pick up from radar for the incoming radar waves from a ship, aircraft. If you look at INS Surat, this is the last ship in the destroyer class which we have designed, and this is the most powerful of the destroyers. Now, what is the basic difference between a frigate and a destroyer? Traditionally, a destroyer used to be a heavy ship, very heavily armed with longer endurance. Today, that difference is blurred. What is important is most of the equipment fit on both the ships, whether Surat or Nilgiri, are Indian manufactured by BEL, Bharat Electronics Limited, and other Indian companies. The ships carry the famed BrahMos missiles. It also carries the Israel's surface-to-air missiles. It carries anti-submarine rockets, anti-submarine torpedoes. It can carry multi-role helicopters, which could be the Sea King Mark 42B or the newly inducted MH-60. What is important for us is we have reached a stage where we can design, develop and manufacture a ship which is much better or equivalent to any world-class ship manufactured by any naval dockyard anywhere in the world.
Okay.
By adding these 2 ships, what we have ensured is that the Indian Navy's reach continues growing up. Today, at any given time, you have an Indian naval ship patrolling either the Gulf of Oman, the Malacca Strait, or somewhere in the Atlantic or somewhere in the Pacific. When it comes to INS Vagsheer, it is the last of the 6 Scorpions which we had signed the deal with the French company. Fortunately, we are going to sign a deal for another 3 Scorpions. This Scorpion has got the ability to subsequently retrofit with AIP, which will be manufactured by DRDO. AIP will ensure that the submarine can stay underwater for as long as 14 to 15 days, which increases its hunting capability. Otherwise, a submarine normally has to surface or subsurface to charge its batteries every 24 to 36 hours, which is a major deterrent for any submarine arm or any submarine fleet. Today, we have a reasonable submarine fleet with a mix of attack submarines and nuclear submarines, and with Vagsheer joining the existing fleet, it makes our submarine fleet more or less complete. Notwithstanding that, there is a need to increase the warships and the submarines, considering that we have a 7,500 kilometers coastline and we are eyeing at becoming a global entity and having a global presence.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Those are all the very important aspects, and thanks for giving us specifications of what these frigates and these warships and submarines are capable of doing, and how the indigenously developed manufactured warships, frigates are going to help India in its Make in India defense initiative. Major General Brajesh Kumar, talking about how there have been more deals that have been signed between India and France in bringing up the Scorpions. We also have the Rafale marine jets that are also being commissioned and are going to be arriving in India in the coming years. How important is it to strike a balance between indigenously manufacturing these submarines and other warships as well as missiles versus importing them from France and America and Russia?
Thank you, Megha, for having me on your show. First of all, today happens to be the Army Day, and my greetings to all soldiers, civilians, veterans, and their families on your special occasion. Coming out of the question or the subject of discussion today, that has been the introduction of 3 new ships into the Indian Navy. Firstly, about Indian Navy. Indian Navy is truly the only multi-dimensional service that we have. It performs at surface level, at subsurface level, and at the air level. And phenomenally, these 3 add up to our kitty. Coming to the strategic aspects first. India is a growing power today, both economically and diplomatically. We are punching at our weight, or if not above our weight. Much, it was different in the earlier days, but now to do that, we need to have the matching power of military. So Army, Navy, Air Force all together. We need to have it. And in terms of influence, we have an ocean to the south of us called the Indian Ocean. Domination of Indian Ocean, right from the west, that's the Horn of Africa, to the east, that's the Strait of Malacca, is traditionally our domain. And for fulfilling our domain, for ensuring that we ensure our sea lines of communication, we have a security presence. We fight against those little Houthis-like people who disturb our shipping. We have to have a larger amount of strength.
Yes.
So today, the addition of these 3 ships are a small step, shall I may say, towards filling that gap. Our requirement has been very, very heavy. Even when in the security domain, we have to fight against the Chinese. The issue which probably hurts them more is the 3 lines of communication passing through the Andaman Islands, that is their petroleum border. So even at the border, the counterweight can be done with the strength of the naval presence or Indian Navy. Okay. So therefore, we have to go in that manner.
Very important points made over there, sir. Major General Sanjay Meston, if you could shed more light, and especially in reference to the incidents, the examples that have been given by Captain Karve as well as Major General Brajesh Kumar. Here it is where India and the Indian Navy is, panned out in the Arabian Sea, Gulf of Aden and the Red Sea being examples given, particularly the Houthi attacks that took place, and India has been retaliating in protecting these areas, whether we talk about the attacks on pirates and counters that have been put forth by the Indian Navy in a very successful manner. It's also important to focus on the Indo-Pacific region, where there have been frigates and warships from United States of America, from the United Kingdom, that are at this point in time navigating the waters. Is there a potential for the Indian naval ships to also follow suit, keeping in mind we have large stakes in the Indo-Pacific, in South China Sea?
Megha, good evening. Absolutely right. We have a lot of potential. Firstly, the induction of the latest ships, whether it is frigate, whether it is a destroyer, or whether it is a submarine, I think it is a step in the right direction, because it enhances our modernization capability, and we can be termed as a typical blue water navy. And therefore, our reach gets enhanced. The capabilities of ships is much better. The speed is better. all these characteristics have been highlighted by Captain Karve rightfully. Now, what is the potential? I personally feel that today the threat areas are obviously the Indian Ocean, basically the Arabian Sea and Bay of Bengal, and of course Indo-Pacific, which is, so these are the future flashpoints. And the way Chinese Navy has been growing, because for us the basic competitor is China, and they have enhanced their naval ships, the number of naval ships very, very fast. And one thing I must highlight, whether it is United States or whether it is Americans or whether it is British, China, I think the most important facet is that all these countries have got a dedicated marine force. Now, India, I think in the near future, we need to concentrate on having a dedicated marine force. Right now, we have an ad hoc arrangement to the extent that there are some infantry battalions deployed in Trivandrum or maybe Andaman Nicobar Islands, and they keep rotating after every 3 years. So what happens is they are not permanently the marine force, and India today has to have a marine force. Whatever we are talking about, Houthi rebels and all these activities, anti-piracy, these are defensive measures. In the long run, we have to have offensive capabilities also, and for offensive capabilities, it is extremely essential to have an amphibious dedicated marine force.
Right.
And this is where I can also tell you the background. Way back in 1982, when I was a second lieutenant, I remember that time this idea was conceived by the 3 service chiefs, and we carried out a number of amphibious exercises from 1982 onwards to 1986, and of course then Sri Lanka happened. At that time it was formulated to have a dedicated marine force. We were given some stations and dedicated regiments were nominated. Incidentally, one of the regiments is my own regiment, Maha Regiment, because my basically Jawans are from the coastal area. So anyway, the fact of the matter is that I think today the Indian Armed Forces need to, and the Government of India in consultation, we need to start thinking of a dedicated marine force so that our capability reach enhances, and we have the offensive capability.
Absolutely.
Marine force
Yes.
are very, very important.
Yes, you make
Chinese
a strong
have large
point. I'm
number
going to
of-
come back to you, sir. But Captain Karve, now how important does it become for India to project itself as a maritime power, in particularly being able to protect its maritime boundaries, but at the same time helping and aiding other nations in fighting maritime terror attacks?
You know, it is extremely important that your ships or the warships are seen at sea. One of my batchmates or classmates who sails on the merchant ships as captain, about a couple of years ago, he told me, it is such a comforting sight when you're transiting and suddenly you find a naval ship crossing you. He said, never has it happened in its 45 years, that is late 70s, 80s or 90s, that you could see a naval ship around. He said it gives you such a feeling of not only satisfaction, but a feeling of comfort that someone is looking after you. There is someone to protect you if need be. Finally, what happens is, to be an economic superpower, you require trade. And irrespective of what people may say, 85 to 90% of the trade still takes place by sea. Now, your shipping lanes, like the general pointed out, have to be clear for that. Who is going to guard the shipping lanes? You cannot depend on other nations or other navies. It has to be your own navy which should be guarding your own shipping lanes so that your merchant shipping can transit very safely. If you have to grow up, it is not that only military power is required. Military power and economic power go hand in hand. So it is extremely essential that our ships or the naval presence is seen all around and acknowledged. Things have come to a place where people have started acknowledging, and other nations are asking the Indian Navy for help. Okay, look, my ships are transiting. Is it possible for your naval ship which is around in that area to escort my ships through a particular passage of 100 kilometers or 200 kilometers?
You're absolutely right, sir. Major General Sanjay, okay, before I come to Sanjay Meston, let me get in General Brajesh Kumar also back into the discussion, and very important point that was made by Captain Karve, that, you know, our military might and economic prowess needs to go hand in hand. And we are talking about, as he mentioned, 80% of the world trade happens through maritime channels. And at one point of time, back in the day, ancient India, where our maritime connect and transportation was at such a prime that India was looked upon as a country with maximum number of resources in being able to successfully have that trade with its neighboring nations and even nations far off. It deteriorated over time for a number of reasons, but is there now potential to once again build our naval might, build our maritime growth in a bid to increase trade?
Absolutely, Megha. Why only the maritime? See, the Indian might of research, military machine has to grow up tremendously. As you said, economy and military strength, or shall we put it in a coin, the diplomacy and military strength goes hand in hand. So said Chanakya long time back, so and so very relevant today. But let's also be realistic. These are our requirements. Today, as we, in a very local time frame, the commissioning of the Agalega airfield of the Mauritius coast 2 days back, commissioning of another destroyer in INS Shield by our Raksha Mantri, goes all in this particular direction. But the reality check is, how much money can we spend? Our defense budget has generally hovered around the region of 1.8 to 2.4%. It has to move in substantially. That is one. That can only happen with the economy. Second, and the more important, with regards to our Navy and the Air Force is concerned, are very heavy dependent on Russia. Even today, when you talk of that INS Nilgiri has 60%, 65, 70% indigenous, but that 30% is one which we are looking at. Second, the third aspect is, can we be solely dependent on Russia? An actual fact is Russia and Ukraine.
Right.
Ukraine. Not many know that bulk of our engines, gas turbine engines, are sourced from Ukraine. So when the war is on, we suffer both ways. And therefore, the point which you raised initially, we have started looking towards the West to diversify our requirement of sourcing our equipment, both make in India or buy and make in India. So French have come in handy, so have the Americans and the others. And the third aspect is, how do you integrate these and how do you make yourself Atmanirbhar Bharat? So military ordinances, whether it's the Army, Navy and Air Force, more predominantly is where we need to concentrate the Indian might of the science, technologies, research people and what have you need to come together to make this reality happen. As of now, the point which brought about a blue water navy, a marine brigade is all part of the wish list. But do we have the capability? It will take a while and we are progressing in that particular direction.
Okay, all right.
So I'm pretty hopeful that we are doing pretty well, and hopefully in the next couple of decades we should catch on with the first-rate armed forces, including the Navy, of a superpower.
General Sanjay Meston, how important does the role of Indian Navy become when we are re-establishing the prowess of Quad? There has been a lot of momentum that has been gained in the last few years, and with the Trump administration come to power, there is potential for growing it further, perhaps making it not just a diplomatic strategic grouping, but progressing towards militarization of it as well. How do you view Indian Navy presence in such a situation in the Indo-Pacific?
Yeah, absolutely. Indian Navy's presence in the Indo-Pacific and with Quad is very, very essential. And one of the biggest advantages what the Navy has, unlike the armed forces, we have a land border. The Navy is not restricted by any borders. They have open high seas where they can operate very freely. And therefore, what advantage is that Navy has got the capability to operate with large number of countries. In the last so many years, we have had a large number of exercises between the Indian Navy and so many countries. At least 40 to 50 countries participate joint, multilaterally with the Indian Navy. So that is a very, very big advantage what the Navy has. And therefore, of late, our role has further been enhanced with Quad. Now, Quad, rightfully so, as on date, we are aware about the status of Quad, but what you highlighted, I also see in the near future, probably Quad will have some kind of security implications, something what the NATO is. It will take a lot of time because there will be reservations, especially with President Trump, because he is opposed to the concept of NATO. And let's see how he plays along with us in this Quad. Luckily, what happens is that President Trump is also very clear that he considers China as one of the biggest threats or foe and the competitor. So therefore, over here, there is convergence of interest between all these four nations. And I think in the near future, Quad may even get enhanced in terms of number of nations, especially some of these Southeast Asian nations also may become Quad partners with Quad, who are having issues of maritime borders with China. So this possibility also exists, and in the long run, perhaps it is as pointed out by you. I see that some kind of a military security aspect is likely to win the Quad. Besides, keeping the shipping lanes open and open trade, etc. So in the long run, I think that may happen, and it all depends how China now. And that is why I think China is doing a lot of emphasis on its modernization in Navy.
Yeah, Captain Karve, quickly a response from you before I wrap this up. Again, the Quad grouping, there could be a Quad plus that could be on the anvil, with other nations also aligning with the grouping. Focus particularly, I want to understand what was the thought behind creating AUKUS, and why couldn't a similar military setup be built with Indian Navy?
Okay, that's a very interesting question. Now, this AUKUS group, if you look at it, US is the prime mover behind it. Every nation has got its personal interest as the most important part in any diplomacy. Like they say, there are only permanent national interests, no permanent friends and no permanent enemies. Now, if you talk of Quad, it is only 4 countries. If you talk of AUKUS, India has been very conveniently omitted. I wouldn't say conveniently, I will say strategically, because somewhere the US does feel that India possibly could be a threat tomorrow to all the major nations. So this is an indirect or a subtle warning to India that, look, we admire you, we respect your strength, but please do remember that you're still not into our zone as a superpower. They are admiring us, they are respecting us, but still it's a very subtle message given to us.
That's interesting. On that note, I'm out of time. I thank all of you for joining me on the telecast, and thanks for watching NewsX.